So good, afternoon. I'm very pleased to welcome Prime Minister KARINŠ to the European Parliament in Brussels again. Prime Minister, dear Krišjanis, geographically, your capital, Riga, is one of the European Union capitals closest to Russia. And in times of war, geography matters. And the Baltic region, with Latvia at its heart, has become the center of gravity for Europe's security and defense. And I believe that we all understand Latvia's warnings about our hostile neighbor much better today. So since day one, Latvia has shaped EU policy, demonstrating steadfast leadership for Ukraine's cause and solidarity with Ukrainians. And I must thank you, Krišjanis, for this, and we must continue. So Ukraine remains at the very top of our priority list. The Russian aggression also endangers our values. Our economy is being shaped by inflation and high energy prices. Climate change is putting further strains on our society, so there are many challenges facing our union as we look towards the end of this legislative mandate with a very huge legislative responsibility here. But as long as we stand together, we have hope. And despite, or maybe because of these challenges, I think Europe is today stronger than before. We talked also about the need for growth and the EU's budget role in boosting our economies, the National Recovery and Resilience Facility, how that can be used also to boost green and digital transformations, while also making sure that the social and economic impacts are cushioned for our citizens. So I am pleased finally that the European Union can rely on trustworthy members such as Latvia with your leadership. Krišjanis, I am confident that after nearly 2 decades of EU membership, you can also continue to rely on us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Metsola. It's always a pleasure to meet with you, and when like-minded people meet, it's good that we exchange the views. Regarding your personal leadership role with the war, Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, I think this is very important, of course, primarily for Ukraine, but for all of us in Europe to see that the leader of our largest democratic common institution has, from the very outset, such a clear and unwavering line of support for Ukraine, for the values that the Ukrainians are fighting and dying for: freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, that which we take for granted on a daily basis, many of us here in Europe. But we have to look forward and plan for a number of contingencies. So on the one hand, everyone is in big anticipation of the spring offensive that the Ukrainians will be waging, but we have to remember that regardless of how the current situation of liberating Ukrainian territory proceeds, we in Europe must remain and prepare ourselves for continued unwavering support regardless of the events of this week or next week, that we have to be in it for the long haul, simply put, as long as it takes. And one of the important aspects that also the European Parliament's position is very clear is that we need to keep not only the extended hand to Ukraine for European membership, but also to help them enact the reforms which, in spite of the war, we see that they're doing on a daily basis. And I think it's important that we would open up the formal accession process. They would have to undergo the reforms regardless, but I think it's extremely important for the Ukrainian people. They are fighting and dying to become one of us, and we have to do our part as well. It's also important that we hold collectively Russia accountable for all of the crimes that they are committing, the crimes that are being documented, the crimes that must be tried in a proper court, and of course the reconstruction of Ukraine has to rest on a large part on the budget of and the funds of Russia, which is currently the country which is in the process of trying to destroy Ukrainian Ukrainian infrastructure. And finally, the sanctions regime that we have adopted in Europe is a very, very important part of our effort to support Ukraine. And what we need to focus on is closing the loopholes so that sanctions avoidance becomes ever more difficult to the point where it becomes in Europe impossible to circumvent. So your leadership, and I think on a personal level, has been extremely important, and I think all of Parliament, certainly all of Ukraine, is counting on this continued unwavering support that all of us in Europe need to continue to voice. Thank you.
Latvian Radio, Artemis Kornahaus. I have a question for President METSOLA, two, if I may. In fact, first, you were just in Moldova, and in Moldova, you delivered a speech about the European aspirations of this country. But I wonder what makes you think that European Union is ready to accept a country like Moldova? And secondly, in your introductory remarks, you mentioned climate change and the legislative responsibility that Parliament holds. Still, at the ENVI committee, we saw now the vote that blocked the passage of the nature restoration law. So are you worried about that these pro-European majorities that you like to talk about often are not there anymore? Thank you.
So thank you very much. On Moldova, for me, it's not a question of what does Europe need, but what can Europe do? The European Union is not just an economic trading bloc. It is a group of countries that have come together like never before, not only for internal market, but for values, and also today more than ever for security. And my message to Moldova when I was there and I addressed an 80,000 strong crowd of pro-European Moldovans who were asking Europe to let them in. And my message to them, in preparation also for the European political community, where we will all be there again next week, was very clear that for every country that looks at Europe as its home, then Europe should open its arms, because otherwise those countries might be tempted or subverted to look elsewhere. And that's a reality that we live today. And it's also one that I think we should not take for granted, the power of transformation that European Union brings. Our countries both joined in 2004, and I think we can all agree the transformative effect that EU membership brought. Now, of course, every country has its own path, and reforms need to be made, and it's a step-by-step process. But let's also match aspirations with our willingness to engage and be open, rather than not. That is a very strong position of the Parliament, and that is one that finds huge majorities in this House. Now, on the vote, it was actually not in that committee that you mentioned, but in two others, so they were opinions. We will need to see the outcome of what that will happen between now and the plenary stage, but that is a vote that reflects the position of that committee at this stage. In this case, it was on the nature restoration law, and it is also one that I would say there are concerns by several countries, and I think those have been reflected in this vote. However, also, I would like to refer to the very, very successful negotiations on the ETS, the emissions trading system, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, the social climate fund, where Parliament's negotiating position, pro-European, very constructive in terms of very much pushing towards the green transition, but also seeing how the economic and social impacts can be cushioned, were reflected in the final agreement with the Council. And that is something that is also one that I think we can be proud of.
Ilza Nagla, Latvian television. Madam President, when you were in Moldova, of course, you saw the pro-European crowd, but nonetheless, there is a strong pro-Russian forces as well in Moldova. So do you think that creates a big risk? And what about the situation in Transnistria, also, which sort of is a very difficult point for Moldova?
I think, Krišjanis, also, perhaps you want to comment on this. I mean, on this, my choice was simple, that I will go to a pro-European rally led by the president of the country that has embarked on unprecedented anti-corruption reforms and pro-European path in a country that is in a very vulnerable situation. And Moldova needs one message, and its people need one message, that they are not alone. I think that is one that I think reverberates across pro-European democracies in our union, and it is one that we will continue to push back against, very real intimidation, threats, or any undermining of any democratic process there, as we continue to see, or we might see in forthcoming elections there.
Sort of your take is that the Russian influence there is increasing or decreasing right now?
I think the message on Sunday was pretty clear, that Moldova is on a very, very clear pro-European path, and it will continue to be so, with our help and support. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.